Okay, now you got it now.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
fine. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I will go for that one. I explain the real information which related to the risk management and we will proceed still further. What are all the principles with respect to the information security? We can get how the risk assessment to risk principles to and risk evaluation process to and the controlling aspects which are there, you study one by one. One of the quotable quote mentioned very clearly, if some sort of a weakness or the dullness and the stillness in our side, then we are not in a position to give a justification. Obviously, that is going to be out of our control, correct? No, that is a quotable quote of long back, 1742, 1799, a German physicist mentioned, once we know once we know how the state of an information which are going to be comes under our weakness, they cease to do us any harm, which are going to be a fact, which are going to be very useless, and which are going to be no protection at all, always insecure one. So, to say, see, what are all the important preamble and the justification if you go for understanding like a risk management. First you have to be thoroughly understand the definition of the management risk management too, and you have to be identify what are all these ways approaches which are there for the risk. Is it possible to control the risk? How we can assess it, how we can identify what are the probability of the occurrence of the various type of resources, impact on an organization, and similarly grasp the real basic foundation features of the documentary evidence of the risk, and is it possible to create a risk assessment auditing aspects. Still further, we can say describe the risk mitigation, describe the migration strategy option for the controlling risk, and identify the category. Various classification can be used to classify the various control aspects, and is it ultimately recognize the conceptual framework which are within the organization, within the entrepreneurship, which are going to be evaluate the risk controls and possible to give a better solution within the organization and be able to formulate what sort of a time complexity, what sort of a uh, financial assessment, what sort of a way in which are going to be very useful and benefit from the various analysis, and also understand how to maintain and perpetual various aspects of the risk management. See, usually if you understand what way the dangerous aspects which are going to be hazard, a process of identifying and controlling risks facing in an organization. So usually you have to be manage various type of resources which are under the control and which are not in a position to provide a risk at all to the organization, and is it possible to go with a set of procedure to manage various type of a processing mechanism to identify and control. We can call it as risk management. Still further, we can say the identification, you have to be thoroughly look into the organization, find out the present status of an information technology, how the situation which are going to be insecure in the organization. Those are the different ways or different mechanism, different techniques which are available to identify the risk identification. Similarly, how we can go for controlling, applying control to reduce the risk to an organization in terms of exchange flow, means in which way the exchange flow comes from the user, come from the system, comes from the organization, comes from the communicating agent, comes from the various other ways. 360-degree angle, which are going to be useful. One and other is a data, and the next one is a information. With the help of a data, how the information and how the wisdom, how the what sort of a knowledge, emotional aspect, which are a part and partial of risk control mechanism. I can say data and information systems. See, my once for all, finding a various type of resources, managing, you can say risk management, and you have to be identify and look at and find out what are all the events which are occurring, and similarly, is it possible to control? See, we have to be overall the user, overall the manpower, overall the staff, overall the admire, overall the privileged user. We can say know yourself, identify, examine, and look at and understand the information systems currently in place. Is it which are going without any problem at all, flowing and explore of the data which are in a currently in an executing positive manner, and those are the identification. Know the enemy, of course we have to be identify, the examine and understand who are all the against, who are all insecure personality, attacking threats facing the to the organization, and you have to be identified. That means to say within the boundary, outside the boundary, within the system, other than the system. Similarly, which are we can find out one with an on for with another with against, like that we can say know yourself, identify, know customers level. Similarly, overall not in a proper way of satisfaction of the work, then responsibility of each community, if you group together like a yourself, overall the user, other than the user community of an interest within the organization to manage risks that are encountered. Usually face to face you have to find out who are all the staff, who are all the staff closer, and who are all the enemies, who are all going to be provide an extensive knowledge. You can find out easily one to another. If so, if so, the roles of a communities of interest, roles of a community of interest, which are going to be gather information security and management of various type of resources and users. So, and similarly, how the information technology all must work together. We can go with a review of the various resources available, and you have to be identify, verify, which are going to be complete in terms of accuracy, measuring values, take a different type of a parameter, and asset various type of a property which are a part and partial of an organization, you can say inventory, and review and verify threats as well as controls and the mitigation of strategies. So once we have a review of the various resources, so you have to verify the threats which are among, on par with or against with controlling various type of closing factors of the strategies. You can say main key roles who are involving in a communities of interest and who are on the managing various type of resources. Review cost effectiveness of each control. If you make a classification from the system, from the user, from the developmental work, whatnot you can say, in that one, you can identify easily, review cost effectiveness of each control. How much time is going to be take, how much time is going to be wind up, how much time which are going to be useful effectively, and finally verify the effectiveness of controls deployment. If you are planning a framework, if you are go for the setting of a software packages which are going to be under the control and with the help of the system or hardware, is it possible to how which are going to be deploying with the help of various resources. First and the foremost, we have identified very clearly risk identification. Assets are targets of various threats and the threat agents. If you say the property which related to the organization, property which relates to the entrepreneurs and the educational institutions. If any sort of a threats, we can say different threats and the threat agents, then you have to be identified. Risk management involves identifying the organization's assets and the identify threat vulnerability. Suppose on for with and the against and the how, which are going to be evidence for insecure or stealing of a flow of a data intruder, then you have to be identified. Similarly, we have to be begin with the identifying organization assets and assessing their value. Not only that one, what is the cost of this one time schedule? How long which are going to be like this way continuing process? We can identify all the things thoroughly and to one to another. There should be a components of risk identification. There should be a components of risk identification. We can identify, plan and organize the process. Initially, you have to be set a target, how overall the privileged user, overall the customer, overall the staff, overall the managing authority ready to work out. Categorize system components because which are all holds good for the risk management, which are not holds good for the risk management, which are not in vulnerable condition. Correct? No, you have to be make a classification of various system components, hardware as well as a software system components. You have to manage with an inventory and the category assets. That means to say, in terms of monetary, in terms of time bound, in terms of characteristic feature properties, we can say these are the various type of components of a risk identification. One among we can identify, specify what are all the assets are there. The process of a complete research risk in identification involves beginning with a plan and organize the process, classification of the system components, so manage with the inventory and the category of the various type of a property. So, and is it possible to identify the threats and the vulnerabilities, so, and finally specify how which are going to be thoroughly impact on the assets. These are all the various type of phases which are involving in case of risk identification. Similarly, as like in the risk identification, risk assessment also. You say RI and RA, RI and RA. Assign a value to attack on assets. See, if a user comes as a guest faculty, is a user come as a visiting member, is a VIP, correct? No, you have to give a time bound. The value representation, that is why you can say assign value to attack on assets. See, we can't believe he is coming for the purpose of utilizing, in which way he is asking for using like online offline services. The time you can't easily trace, but you have to make a log values of the representation, what type of a task which are going to be executable, because you are giving the asset of the system, you are giving the property of that one valuable resources. So these are all a complete picture. That's why assign value to attack on user overall be coming in a different mode, a different a class, a different value of representation. You have to be assigned some value. Time is a value. Similarly, task is a value, and financial element is a value. You can consider a different type of metrics representation. Assess likelihood to attack on vulnerability. That means to say chances are there. See what will happen. You are going to be go with an email. Suddenly we can get various type of an entertainment. Our mind automatically fluctuates such a way that likelihood attack vulnerability. Is it chances to refer this link or that link? Correct? No. Mean to say is which are without the knowledge, without our information, kind information, or if you just click, what is going to happen? But usually they used to take a complete information about the user, where he or she is using. These are all the chances of attack and vulnerabilities. Calculate a relative risk factor for assess. That means to say you have to identify, is it possible? You can go with like a certain procedure which are involving. Correct? No, you can find out what are all the factors of the asset which are going to be affect a computing value relatively. which are making use for the purpose of that one in terms of usage, or in terms of the properties, in terms of the features, so various other aspects are coming. Review possible controls. See, we have to set up a council, you have to set up a committee, you have to set up, is it through the help of a software? So even though he is using it remotely, is it possible to set up not to be used with a logical level of a log filtering? And these are the various type of a review possible controlling. You have to be odd from the systems administrator end, or from the gateway through, or we can use connectivity from the switch. These are all the assessment. Similarly, document finding. See, once everything is over, you identify the person is coming and attacking person is coming and the hacking person is coming with an insecure value of representation, then you have to be thoroughly at what time ERC came, what sort of a documentation, that means to say what sort of a task has been executed, and these are the documentation you have to be identified. You can say document find. Components of risk identification. A total process of a involving, one is a risk identification, another one is risk assessment. And similarly, priority. You can say how the identification, valuation, and the prioritization. You have to go with a certain steps in a sequential manner. You can say iterative process begins with identifications of assets. What are the properties which are there valuable? What are the properties which are invaluable? What are the properties which are going to be insecure? What are the properties which are going to be not at all secure? We can say identify which are all the properties which are going to be need to be formulated, including all elements of an organization system, like from the including a user, manpower, certain procedures, so steps we have to be considered, data and information, set of instruction packages. So what are all the physical identity, we can say hardware components. So in order to manage for this both software and then you have to make use of network options, correct? No? You identify such a iterative process begins with a step-by-step procedure, one of the other, in which way the effective from one phase to another phase for the prioritization. Assets are then classified and categorized. You have to say which are a low level, medium level, and the bottom level, or which are highly prioritized based on that one value of representation. Now, different type of a users, a set of procedure, like that way we can classify and category. We can say how we can, the ways in which way you are going to be make a classification of a properties which are part of. Some of the important, if you look at like SDLC, software development life cycle. Software development life cycle have a standard level of a phases. How we can find out like a planning, designing, implementing, and similarly testing, finally maintaining, correct? Same fashionable manner, same type of a way of the procedure, secured software development lifecycle also. And risk management system components also have their own level of process, we can say how the phase by phase, but which involves, we can, if you go for a classification and the categorization of components of this one, and you have to make a comparison, like traditional system, what are all the people, maybe employees and maybe non-employees. If you look at in case of risk, trusted employees and other staff, you say a chairman, staff, guest faculty, overall, correct? No, we can say D group work. There are similarly people, a trusted organization, stranger. They used to be, correct? No, they used to be very close to the employees, but still they are not in a position to make on par with the improvement, the performance level and the quality of improvement of processing. You can say non-employees. They look like an employee, but they are grabbing. They used to be interviewed in various ways. You can say non-employees, other than employees. Uh, what are all the procedures which are there? Both the cases. In case of a risk management system component, information technology and business standard procedures, there should be level of PO, you can say SOP, standard of procedures, in case of whichever it may be. If it's meant for online transaction, no. If it's meant for share marketing, if it's meant for how the building out, correct, no, various way, the procedures are there. Information technology, which provide an excellent knowledge how best way IT and business sensitive procedures. You can choose one to all how the level of information which are going to be gained. The third one is component is a data. A data always correct no abstract in the form of an information. But this information in case of a risk management and as well as system have their own component. See, once you say data, data should be useful from one user to another user. You can say a transmission, no, processing, storage level of the flow, okay, one to another. That means to say, if his data is available, that should be useful, that should be storage, that should be recovered, that should be restored, correct, no, all set up, because data with respect to the traditional system of components, but how it differ in case of a secured software development lifecycle with their risk management system component in the form of information consists of phase by phase. One is on transmission, processing, finally storage. And what way the set of instruction packages which are going to be help in both the case software with respect to applications, software with respect to managing. We say the platform, operating system, Windows platform, Linux platform, Macintosh platform, Android, correct? No? How in all the cases we can find out different level of risk management of resources. But here a security component, that means in addition to the what we mentioning like a software within the flower bracket, you can say one is an application, other one is a platform independent security components in the maybe physical component, maybe communication component, maybe a security with respect to how which are going to be identified logically, physically. That's why a software. If you take an example like a switch, if you take an example like a router, or if you take an example like a hub, these are all the components. We can say the components, how you can easily manage security. 8 port hub, 24 switch, rack switch, correct? No standard level of a switch, which are going to. We can use a set of instruction package easily manage the risk. Similarly, hardware, system device and the peripherals. If you have like a laptop or a desktop or a palm top, the device which are going to be involved. Similarly, networking component need to be set up. If it's available independently, if it's available on one side, we are not in a position to gain a knowledge. Correct? No, how best way in order to manage throughout the communication paradigm, like a intranet as well as internet. You can say local area network, metropolitan area network, wide area network, how intranet components, so internet, and you can go with a zone basis. How the data which are going to be mining zone components, so which are a part and partial of risk management system components. Similarly, similarly, you can identify, sorry, people, procedures, and the data assets identification. We have mentioned like who are all the manpower, who are all the staff, who are all the privileged user, who are all the authority. We can say human resources. So in order to manage, then there should be documentation. No, data information are more difficult to identify. That means to say we don't know what sort of a data comes from the user who is very close, who is unauthorized user, who is new to the system, who is unknown personality. Correct? Now you can very difficult to find out what way of thinking of a mindset of a people. That's why it's very difficult to identify. People with knowledge and more a practical level of the exposure and good judgment should be assigned this task, especially who are the system administrator, who are the network administrator, who are the systems analysis. Correct? You can say different grade or the class of that one. People with a knowledge, people with an experience, so people with a good judgment should be assign a particular task, is it possible to manage the resources? These assets should be recorded using a reliable data handling process. See, whatever the transactions are going to be take place, even though you say how you can come to know myself is debiting or crediting, correct? No, there should be record. Even though something goes wrong also, you can easily get through from the record itself only. How the log table which are going to be manageable day-to-day online transaction. If you are purchasing, correct? No, we can't just say if this particular component is not usable, low, insecure, low, even though you can go with some standard level of terms and condition. Is it possible to while returning? When did you purchase? What sort of a policy you just correct? No, these are all the recorded flow of an information. Say these assets should be recorded using reliable data handling process and you have to be managed. Correct? Now you can identify even though two different user interacted and made any sort of a business, two types of a user they interacted and they have done their own communication interaction, but in between you can find out most of the reliability and the unreliable components done the work correct now. But is it possible to handle this process in a significant manner? That is the reality of that. Similar fashion, still we can continue like how the people procedures in the data identification, the process, the properties attributes for people, and you have to give a complete picture about a login, no, user ID, UID, JI, correct, no, group identification, no, and where exactly the location, no. You have a thorough justification for this one. Name, number, ID. We have like a register number, we have like a name, we have like a correct, no, all sort of. Similarly, supervisor, who is the managing authority, who is going to be controlling the transaction flow of that one, who is the heading of this a complete flow, correct, no? Security clearance level, special skills, see, if you have any sort of a problem in your marks card, correct? Now you can't ask chairman once again has to send to the controller. Controller has to take the permission from the vice chancellor. These are the way, correct? Now, the in which way regular activities what we are seeing like a physical level of the process of an interface same as it is if that's particularly going with like a paperless work, you can say digital transaction, digital way of e-governance, electronic governance, you can say security clearance level with the help of special skills. A person who are all going to be handle system analysis, system manager, take the permission from the authority. Similarly, he has to data entry person and he has to be should be evidence for that one. He can't change the marks, correct? No, even though out of 36, 36 out of 100, if it comes, is it going to be passed? Then if you say fail in the marks card, who is the responsible, correct? No, then you can easily write a letter. That letter once again, it's go in a flow. These are the various type of special skills because with the help of how the set of instruction package or the software available to user. And similarly, property attributes for procedures. You have to give a description for marks card, description for degree certificate, description intended purpose. What is the purpose of your correct? No, if you are not clearing a degree, then you don't have a procedure to get into the PG. Correct? No, these are all how you are. Just I'm taking a simple example. Even though how if you just get through without boarding pass, we can't just travel in a flight. There should be correct. Now, before getting the boarding pass, you have to show your identity, show your Aadhaar card, show your whatever the ID there proof. These are all very, very important flow of an information. We can say intent purpose of the attribute. What elements used to be tied to storage location for reference, is it stored? Is it stored in a standard mainframe server, supercomputer, or in a rack server, or in a cloud environment? You have to be make use a certain procedure steps which are there attributes. Storage location for update flow. Storage location for updating a flow. Suppose you are using only the Windows patches which are very, very essentially required, you can get in correct, no, even though you're using for the online and the offline transaction regularly for conducting various type of a webinar aspect. It automatically asks, is it would like to go for update? These are the various parameters. Similarly, asset attributes for data. See, if you choose like a user, if you choose like a procedure, if you choose like an exchange unit, everything have their own identification parameter. You say metrics. You say that one different type of a classes of that. Similarly, a data classification. Is it like a binary or ASCII? Is it an image? Is it an audio? Is it a video? Correct? No. Owner and creator manager. Who is the right person? Who is the originator? Where it came? And how which are going to be formulated. A duplication exists, malfunction, correct? No? These are all how who is the original owner, creator, and manager. Similarly, size of the data structure, that is very, very important, because is it a linear state, is a non-linear state, is a stockhold one, is a like a tree structure one, whatever it may, you can say what type of a data structure, size, how long is going to be useful, is it you have to be modified, you have to go with an alter of the various, is it you have to take only the consideration of the groups, so rings, so graphs, so various, correct? No, different type of a data structure, you can say data structure size of a graph, we can convert those in the form of a binary values, in the form of a pixel representation. These are all various classification. Data structure used for how we can manage. Suppose we have to be sort in the form of who are all the first user logged in, who are all the last user logged in, who are all the, we can identify with the intruder various parameter with the help of standard data structure. Online, offline, I told you very clearly, person should be online. Just get into that one. During the time of making a business itself only, correct? No, you will forget. We'll give the card, you'll go it. But suddenly, chances of just take the camera, pick up that one. Similarly, we don't know. We will come out and they can make use for any other purpose, correct? No, chances are there. What type of parameter? Location identification. Is it possible to restore the procedure which are involving to handle the various type of data sets, data usage? And similarly, you can find out hardware, software, network. See, any sort of an organization, any sort of an entrepreneurs, any sort of an education system having a physical component as well as a logical component. If so, what information attribute to track depends on needs of organization, risk management effort. What are the key roles which are going to be ultimately fulfill the risk which are going to be insecure. Management needs of information security, and we can say a different community. People are the standard level of a community, users who are all there internally or externally. Similarly, how we can manage different type of physical components. And similarly, a standard level of a properties attribute to be considered are name, IP address. I told you, because if you are using with the IP address only you are managing, or it may be online or offline or links which are going to be established. So a logical address is a must. MAC address, physical identity of the in which way the process is going to be provided services of talking or chatting or doing business. So element type, it may be a serial number, correct? No, any type of a device they have their own structure of the serial number, how which are going to be manageable. These things which are all very, very closely related to by identify like and manufacturer identification, model number, part number, software version, what is a kernel level, what sort of a physical and the logical location which are available, how we can find out a different type of an entity. These are various risks. Similarly, many organizations have data classification schemes. We say that one is more confidential and the internal with respect how which are going to be through and the public data. You can say public and the private. A public irrespective of in which way the organization is going to be handled. Confidential, there's a group, correct? Now, what way the chairman, what interacting to the higher authority and the honorable vice chancellor and the beloved, correct? Now, they have their level of some of the confidential flow. Similarly, internal, once again, all various uh, heading of the information flow of the internal users. Similarly, public data, other than the confidential, other than the internal, within the organization, we can say public domain data. And similarly, components must be specific to allow priority levels. Yes, I told you very clearly, it may be a prioritized with the physical component with respect to best accessibility, best usage, or best services. So identify within a time bound how the data and the categories must be comprehensive and the mutually exclusive. Should be old such a way that how long which are going to be useful, how long which are going to be harmful. If the harmful, is it possible to recover best way, mutually exclusive manner, understandable manner, one to another, we can get through. And some of the questions help develop a criteria for asset valuation, which information assets is going to be most critical one. What sort of a revenue key roles which are going to be, is it possible to replace the effective, that means to say more expensive one, is it possible to provide a better productivity, and sometimes we can get an embarrassing situation because of using which are not at all useful, then you are managing the resources. These are all the things. Just I'm going to be closed down. These are all the information. Understand very clearly in which way the roles and the communities of the interest who are all going to be managed. The risk management process to identify, similarly to control, and the assess is a one to another, which completes the complete data and the complete topic which is related to risk and risk management. Ladies and gentlemen, next class we'll discuss about I have completed all contents of the first unit.